Oh, you want to play psycho killer? Can I be the helpless victim?
Cross your eyes and scream, man. Scream for your life.
Welcome, Scream Queens, Kings, and Things. Whether you're screaming at movies or the real-life stuff, I'm your host, Jenica Olin. This is my 43rd episode. My theme of the month is Supernatural September, with 4 weeks of horror movies based on supernatural events. A cheerful suburban home becomes the site of increasingly disturbing paranormal activity, beginning with playful tricks and escalating into terrifying encounters with a malevolent force. When the youngest daughter is taken into another realm, her family must fight to bring her back before she is lost forever. If you're new here, each episode will have an intro, brief synopsis of the movie, an analysis of the film, and then I get into the true horrors of it all. Spoiler alert! I've made it my job to spoil the shit out of this movie. Today I'll be covering the 1982 classic Poltergeist, directed by Tobe Hooper, written by Steven Spielberg, Michael Grais, and Mark Victor, starring JoBeth Williams, Heather O'Rourke, and Craig Nelson. The estimated budget was $10 million, and the estimated gross was $77 million. The tagline, "From a dimension beyond the living, a terror to scare you to death." Some quick trivia about the film. Both of the terrors that plague Robbie come from Steven Spielberg's own fears as a child, a fear of clowns and a tree outside his window. Drew Barrymore was considered for the role of Carol Ann, but producer Steven Spielberg wanted someone more angelic. Barrymore's audition ultimately landed her the part of Gertie in E.T. The film was originally given an R rating from the MPA due to scenes of a child in peril despite little gore in the film. The rating was lowered to PG on appeal. The film predates the PG-13 rating by 2 years, which is the rating this film would have most likely gotten without issues. The word poltergeist is German for noisy ghost. Though on-screen credit goes to Tobe Hooper, a wealth of evidence suggests that the most of the directorial decisions were made by Steven Spielberg. One of the earliest films to deal with EVP, electronic voice phenomena. The sound effects for the beast that attacks the house at the end of the movie is the source for the MGM lion roar. Let's set the scene with a synopsis of the movie.
The house looks just like the one next to it. And the one next to that. And the one next to that. A young couple live in it.
Give Ken a kiss.
You are so obnoxious.
With their 3 children.
Poor Ken, honey, chew each bite 10 times.
And something more.
In the planned community of Cuesta Verde, California, real estate agent Steve Freeling lives with his wife Diane and their 3 children. Their comfortable suburban life takes a turn when their youngest, Carol Ann, begins sleepwalking and talking to voices in the static of their television set after announcing, "They're here." Strange phenomena erupt in the house. Objects move on their own, furniture stacks itself, and an invisible force slides people across the floor. At first playful, the disturbances quickly grow sinister. One night, during a violent storm, a tree comes alive and attacks their son, Robbie. While Steve rescues him, Carol Ann is pulled into a supernatural void through her bedroom closet.
1,000, 2, 1,000, 3,
The family soon discovers she can still communicate through the television. Desperate, Steve brings in a team of parapsychologists from UC Irvine. They confirm the house is plagued by a powerful poltergeist and even witness terrifying visions and violent attacks themselves. When the scientists can't help, they return with a spiritual medium, Tangina Barons. She explains that the house sits on unsettled ground and is haunted by spirits that cling to Carol Ann's life force, mistaking it for salvation. More dangerously, a malevolent presence, the beast, uses her as bait to trap others.
Now clear your minds. It knows what scares you. It has from the very beginning. Don't give it any help. It knows too much already.
Tangina devises a plan. Diane, tethered by a rope, enters the other dimension to rescue her daughter. After a harrowing struggle, Diane returns with Carol Ann, and Tangina declares, "The house is clean, but the nightmare isn't over." On what should have been their final night in the house, the beast strikes back. Robbie is nearly strangled by his own clown doll. Diane is dragged across the walls and ceiling, and Carol Ann is almost sucked into another portal. Diane fights to save her children, even falling into a muddy swimming pool where coffins and corpses rise from the ground.
Get away from my baby! Get away!
Meanwhile, Steve discovers the horrifying truth from his boss. The development was built over a cemetery where only the headstones were moved and the bodies were left behind. The family barely escapes as coffins erupt through the house and the entire structure implodes into another dimension. Stunned neighbors watch as the freelings flee. The weary family checks into a motel, and in one final act of defiance, Steve pushes the TV outside. Now it's time to talk horror, and today I am solo. My guest that was supposed to be on had some conflicting scheduling issues, and I wasn't able to find someone in such short notice, so it's all me. So let's get into these themes in the movie, and then I'm going to move through to the true horrors and all of that. The first theme I have in here is the corruption of the American dream. The 1980s marked a boom in suburban development where middle-class families sought a safety and comfort outside of cities. Steve has a line. He says the grass is green on both sides when he's trying to sell the American dream. He is the ultimate poster boy for this lifestyle, and the company tries desperately to keep him. They emphasize that he sold like 40% of the properties in the community or something like that. Poltergeist critiques this dream, showing how mass production suburban housing developments were often built cheaply and carelessly, sometimes literally covering up history, as seen with the burial ground. It suggests that consumerism and rapid expansion come with hidden cost. That scene with Steve and the developers is one of the most important in Poltergeist, because it lays bare the film's critique of greed and carelessness. The developers casually discuss moving a cemetery to make room for more suburban expansion, treating it as a minor inconvenience rather than a moral or spiritual issue. Steve, visibly uncomfortable, questions the idea, and the developer reassures him that it's not like it's an ancient tribal burial ground, a line that's meant to downplay the gravity, while ironically foreshadowing the true horror. Later, when Steve realizes his home is a relocated graveyard where only the headstones were moved, not the bodies, the earlier conversation takes on full weight. The suburban dream was literally built on top of desecrated land, making the haunting not random, but a consequence of greed and negligence. So I made a personal connection to this. This reminds me of here in Florida where I live. I once did a ghost tour in St. Augustine, and we were told about all the bodies that were found during construction. Parts of downtown St. Augustine, Florida is built over or very close to historic burial ground. And some construction projects have uncovered human remains because it's the oldest continuously occupied European established settlement in the continental U.S. It was founded in 1565. The downtown area overlaps with centuries of layered history. They did exactly what the Poltergeist implies. It's part of the lore of the town and one of the many reasons people believe it's haunted. My next theme in here is the displacement of the sacred. The horror stems from disturbing sacred ground in the name of profit, literally moving gravestones, but not the bodies. In the 1980s, with the rise of corporate greed and profit over principle mentalities, this theme mirrored cultural unease about moral compromise in pursuit of economic growth. Real human skeletons were used in the swimming pool since the crew decided it would have been too complicated and expensive to get fake ones. Tobe Hooper had previously done the same in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 1974. JoBeth Williams was not made aware of this until after the scene was finished. Ooh, I would be so pissed if someone put me in a muddy hole pit with actual skeletons, like actual human remains. Are you kidding me? That's insane. Ugh. JoBeth Williams was hesitant about shooting the swimming pool scene because of the large amount of electrical equipment positioned over and around the pool. Steve Spielberg crawled into the pool with her to shoot the scene. Spielberg told her, "Now, if a light falls in, we'll both fry." The strategy worked, and Williams got in the pool. It's one of the most iconic scenes in the movie. It's chilling, terrifying, and I'm pretty sure JoBeth Williams was actually that wasn't acting. In what she was terrified. She was terrified that she was either going to get electrocuted. She had skeletons around her. I'm pretty sure she thought they were fake, but they were real. So when she looked at them, I'd be like, oh my God, that's really good practical effects. That scares the shit out of me. If I was expecting to see a fake skeleton and then I was confronted with a real skeleton, you can tell the difference. So I'm sure when she looked at the skeletons, she was scared. Tangina calls them the lost souls, the lingering ones. They haven't gone into the light because they're confused, earthbound, and still attached to the life they once had. This could be because their graves are being messed with, but that isn't confirmed until later in the movie. Dr. Lesh makes a point that the paranormal activity at the Freeling home is probably a poltergeist, not a haunting, since poltergeists typically are associated with a person and hauntings are associated with a place. However, this assessment is revealed to be incorrect. When Stephen realizes that the house was built on a cemetery, that means it was actually a haunting, not a poltergeist. My next theme in here is technology and the supernatural. In the early 80s, television was becoming a near constant presence in homes, shaping cultural and identity. In the film, the TV becomes the gateway for malevolent spirits, echoing parental anxieties about the influence of mass media on children. It plays into fears that technology was eroding family communication and exposing kids to unknown dangers. Poltergeist made TV the literal gateway for the supernatural. Cronenberg's Videodrome and films like The Video Dead or Pulse took that idea further, reflecting a widespread cultural anxiety in the 1980s about technology entering the home and corrupting kids. This is still a fear, even worse now with youth spending most of their time on the internet, the constant access they have to social media with their cell phones. If they were afraid of technology in the 80s, they're definitely afraid of it now. So there's a scene where Steve is trying to watch a football game, but every time his neighbor changes the channel in his own house, Steve's TV switches too. They step outside and argue across the fence, waving their remotes at each other, each insisting the other stop. Even before the haunting begins, Steve can't control his own home because the neighbor's remote overlaps. This foreshadows how technology opens the house to outside forces. It's a very subtle theme, but it is there, and it's a really funny scene. This movie isn't a comedy, but there are some funny scenes like sprinkled throughout. Dr. Lesh talks with Diane and Robbie about a white light that people see when they're dying. This comes from two places: war stories, where pilots claim to have seen such a light in combat, and the book Life After Life, written by Dr. Raymond Moody and published in 1975. It's a series of compilations and testimonies about people who technically died and were brought back to life, a phenomenon known as near-death experience, NDE. One of the trademarks of this phenomenon is a voice, commonly a friend or family member who died some time ago, saying, "It's not your time," indicating to the person that they must go back to the land of the living. Poltergeists are a type of ghost responsible for physical disturbances, such as loud noises and objects being moved or destroyed. There have been reports of this type of ghost since at least the 17th century, starting with the tale of so-called Glenluce Devil in 1654. Psychical researchers have noticed that most poltergeist cases seem to center on an adolescent, usually a girl. So with that, my next theme is going to be innocence versus corruption. The targeting of the youngest child can be read as a commentary on how innocence, both literal in children and symbolic in cultural ideals, is always at risk of being consumed by greed, neglect, and forces beyond parental control. At first, the haunting is super playful, rearranging chairs, pulling people across the floor. It's almost like a physics experiment in the beginning. When filming this scene in which Heather O'Rourke had to hold onto the headboard while a wind machine blew toys into the closet behind her, the young actress fell apart. Producer Steven Spielberg stopped everything, took her in his arms, and said that she wouldn't have to do that scene again. Poor little baby. She was just a little baby. And she was put in that wind machine. I mean, that would be terrifying. Another scene with the child being endangered was when Robbie was being strangled by the clown's arms. The clown's arms became extremely tight, and Robbie started to choke. When he screamed out, "I can't breathe," Steven Spielberg and Tobe Hooper thought that the boy was ad-libbing and just instructed him to look at the camera. When Spielberg saw Robin's face turning purple on the video monitor, he ran over and removed the clown's arms from Robin's neck. Oliver Robbins added that if Spielberg hadn't, maybe I wouldn't have been here today. That is terrifying. They put these kids through so much, really corrupting that innocence. Tangina explains that the spirits are attracted to Carol Ann's life force because it's like a light to them. She's pure, innocent, and vibrant. Instead of moving toward the true afterlife light, they mistake Carol Ann's energy as their path, which traps her in their world. Then we've got the malevolent presence among them. It's a very dark entity. Tangina calls it the beast. It's manipulative and uses fear and deception to control the others. The beast keeps the lost souls from crossing over by holding them near Carol Ann, using her as a distraction. Tangina frames it almost like a spiritual ecology. The house isn't just haunted randomly. It's a crossroads where confused souls are stuck, feeding off a child's vitality instead of moving on. So my next theme is the family bonds and protection. The Freeling family in this movie, they really stick together. They fight for each other. Like, the acting is phenomenal. when it comes to this family. It's very believable that they love each other. They're worried sick about Carol Ann. The dad is trying everything he can to protect them. The mom is a badass that's just like, I am going to save my child. The kids are also putting on a brave face, trying to help any way they can. It's just, they are very much a united front in this movie. So how does this tie into the times? The Reagan era ideal heavily emphasized the nuclear family as the core of American life. The film reinforces this by portraying family as the ultimate defense against evil. Despite chaos, their love and unity are what allows them to fight back, reflecting the cultural fixation on preserving traditional family values. The Freeling family was your quintessential American family. The only glitch is that they have a blended family, which was becoming more common but still had a stigma around it. When Steve tells the parapsychologist his family members' ages, he says that Dana, his oldest daughter, is 16 and his wife, Diane, is 32. Many viewers interpret this to mean that Diane was only 16 when she gave birth to Dana. However, the novelization of the film clarifies that Diane is Steve's second wife and that Dana is actually Diane's stepdaughter. In the movie, when telling the parapsychologist about his family, Steve specifically says, my daughter, Dana, and not our daughter, Dana. At a point in the movie, Diane lies in bed trying to sleep when a supernatural force tries to remove her red shirt, shaking her in bed like she was being sexually assaulted. Coincidentally, a few months later, The Entity, 1982, was released, which was another horror film about a woman sexually assaulted by a supernatural force. I think this is meant to emphasize that none of them are safe. It's almost emasculating for Steve because he can't protect his kids or his wife. And for some reason, in that time period, we had a really weird fetish going on with hauntings and being assaulted by ghosts. It was weird. It was a weird time. After Steve, Diane and Tangina rescue Carol Ann from the clutches of the beast and the TV people in the netherworld. Diane tells Stephen, it's funny, she doesn't remember anything. It's like it was all a bad dream, and she's woken up. So the audience is led to believe Carol Ann's forgotten the parallel spirits dimension and the netherworld, etc. But then later, when the evil clown attacks Robbie and their doorway opens in a sinister, beckoning way, she screams, no more, no more. So either she does remember her interactions with the evil spirits earlier in the story, or seeing the doorway open forced her repressed memories to resurface. One of the most beautiful moments in this movie almost brought me to tears. It really makes you root for this family. Is after Diane rescues Carol Ann from the afterlife and they fall violently into the living room, Tangina has them taken to the bathtub, which is full of water. Water is considered the element of life, implying that the tub is almost like a womb and that they are to be reborn. In this scene, we have Steve there by their side. He's wiping away the goop that's on them. He's telling them to breathe. And it really is like after someone gives birth, having that baby breathe for the first time. That's when you can have your sigh of relief, like everything went as planned. Everything's going to be fine from here on out. And so as he's wiping the goop away, he's putting water on them. They start breathing, and it's this collective relief, all the characters, and it's just beautifully written, executed, acted, the effects, everything. I mean, it is a perfect scene, especially to show the family bond and how important that is. It's pretty great. It's pretty great.
You son of a bitch, you moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You son of a bitch, you left the bodies and you only moved the headstones!
So the True Horrors portion is going to be about the things that happen to cast and crew either on set or after filming. 2 cast members were subsequently murdered. Dominique Dune, was strangled by her former boyfriend, John Thomas Sweeney, in the driveway of her West Hollywood home in October 30th, 1982. This is one of those cursed movies. The so-called Poltergeist curse is an urban legend largely based on the four cast members' deaths during 1982 to 1988. Only one of these deaths was unnatural. Julian Beck, who appeared in Poltergeist 2, The Other Side, 1986, died after a long battle with stomach cancer. Will Sampson, also in Poltergeist 2, died from complications of a heart-lung transplant. And Heather O'Rourke died at age 12 from complications of intestinal stenosis after being misdiagnosed with Crohn's disease in 1987. Lou Perryman, who played the construction worker Bluto, was murdered in 2009. Jo Beth Williams, Craig T. Nelson, and Oliver Robbins, the rest of the Freeling family cast members from the first movie, as well as many other main character members from the two sequels, are all still alive as of 2024. Jo Beth Williams had a supernatural experience during the making of the film. Whenever she came home from filming, the pictures on the walls in her house were crooked. Every time she fixed them, they would hang crooked again. Zelda Rubinstein also had an experience when a vision of her dog came to her and said goodbye. Hours later, her mother called her and told Rubinstein that her dog had passed away that very day. In a recent interview, Oliver Robbins and Steven Spielberg toasted Heather O'Rourke's birthday on the set with a bottle of wine for all the adult actors. He said Spielberg then said when O'Rourke was 21, he would buy her a bottle of wine. Tragically, that day never came, as O'Rourke died on February 1st, 1988, at age 12. Zelda Rubinstein suddenly had psychic ability, claiming to have visions of things before they happened. The actual Poltergeist story was inspired by an incident from the 1800s. The city of Denver, Colorado, wanted to develop a grand park in an area occupied by a cemetery. The city put out notices for bids to relocate the cemetery and gave the contract to the lowest bidder. About a third of the way into the project, the contractors started moving just the headstones. The city was close to finishing the project when one of the contractor employees spilled the beans. The contractor was arrested, but the damage was done. The city couldn't afford to tear down the building and dig up the cemetery, so they finished the project, leaving the unmarked graves as they were. The park is Chessman Park. The graves sit under the Greek Pavilion in the east and extend south to 8th Avenue. When Diane falls into the unfinished swimming pool, a lot of skeletons and corpses appear in the water. This, along with coffins and more corpses rising from the ground, reveals that all of the suburb rises over the original cemetery. The construction of Cuesta Verde turned the original holy ground into unholy ground, causing the spirits of the deceased to wake up from death and cause all the paranormal events that happened after. It's a common belief that the dead and the living can't share ground or terrain, for if they did, it would cause the spirits of the deceased to wake up and disturb the living. Part of the plot is loosely inspired by the Seaford's case. In February 1958, the four members of the Herman family, formed by a husband and businessman, James, the wife and nurse, Lucille, and the two children, then 13-year-old Lucille Jr. and 12-year-old James Jr., claimed to live supernatural events in their home at 1648 Redwood Path in Seaford, a Long Island suburb. The case acquired fame after it was covered by mass media, being investigated by the local authorities in different times, trying to find a scientist's explanation of the events. At Duke University, North Carolina, the Herman family asked help from Father William McLeod of the Church of St. William's in a failed attempt to exorcise an entity who was named Popper. Reportedly, the different attempts to investigate caused the events to gain in intensity and violence, being recorded at a total of 67 disturbances between February 3rd and March 10th. When the activity stopped suddenly without apparent reason, despite the alleged explanations given to clarify the events happened, the case remains unsolved. Let's end on a high note. Weekly Horror Update. The Trauma Classic, The Toxic Avenger, will be available on digital on September 30th, followed by a physical release on October 28th. Trick or Treat is being newly restored in 4K and back on the big screen for a special long-awaited nationwide release of the horror classic on October 14th and 16th. The new sports horror movie Him is in theaters this Friday. I plan on supporting this one at the box office. The new Conjuring movie is still garbage in my opinion, and I won't be seeing it anytime soon. The Long Walk is in theaters. People are praising it for its relevance in today's political environment. I have not seen this one yet, but I do plan on supporting it in theaters. If you have a movie suggestion that could fit into my category of the month, I will give those movies a rating on my Scream scale and shout you out. My email is screamqueenpodcaster@gmail.com. This is a weekly podcast with episodes out every Thursday. All the research, writing, and audio is done by yours truly. This is a one-woman show, and I'm doing my very best. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. It really means a lot. You can find me on Instagram at Scream Queen Podcaster, Blue Sky at Scream Queen Podcast, TikTok at Scream Queen Podcast, and there's a link tree that will take you to my YouTube and Facebook page as well. Remember, if you mess with the dead, they'll haunt you.